Happy Friday, Brady. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, doing pretty well. I'm also in New York right now, actually. It's funny that we're in separate Zoom portals in the same city, but the weather is beautiful after a rainy weekend, so really
Yes,
can't
it's very
complain.
nice.
You are leading engineering over at GlossGenius, but you have a pretty extensive background in engineering leadership. Maybe give our audience a quick intro to who you are.
Thank you. So I'm Brady Allchin, VP of Engineering at GlossGenius. I've been in the industry, you know, coming up on 20 years. Worked at companies big and small. Got my career start in the Bay Area, and about 10 years ago, made it out east to New York. Um, Worked at startups, saw hypergrowth at Uber, followed Travis over to Cloud Kitchens, now known as Atoms. And now I really found my comfort zone at GlossGenius, Series C company based here in New York with technology teams in the US and Canada and Colombia. And we're here to help support small business owners be successful.
Incredible. This is going to be a fun conversation because you've had a good longitudinal study of software development practices over the last 20 years, and you've seen hypergrowth, you've seen small companies, you've seen big companies, and now things are changing so quickly in front of us with AI that I think you'll have some interesting perspectives on that. But before the call, you were telling me Anthropic reached out to you because you're showing up on one of their leaderboards. What's that about? Tell me more.
Yeah. Oh, this is like one of our proudest moments. So we're very much AI pilled here at Gloss Genius. We've really embraced agentic development. And a few months ago, when we saw Anthropic released this capability called managed agents, we really latched onto it, and we created an internal autonomous agent we called Geni, sort of a double entendre for genius as well as Aladdin. And we created this platform that leverages managed agents. And to an end user, to a developer, it allows you to open up Linear, assign a ticket to Genie, and Genie will do the ticket. So under the covers, it is spawning up multiple sub-agents. It's creating a plan. It's doing implementation. It's doing validation. And all that orchestration is happening within Anthropic's platform. And what we built with Genie is effectively a bridge, a coordinator between Linear, a handful of MCPs and internal systems that we have, and the Anthropic platform. And it's been fascinating to see it come to life. And we're just wrapping up week 3 of it in production. And the amount of capability it's brought us is phenomenal.
Very cool. I work with a lot of companies and startups who are using Cloud Code heavily, but in a local session environment. I think they see the blog posts from, Stripe and WorkOS and Ramp who have talked about these background agent systems, but they seem like a lot of work to get off the ground. And I think there's some inhibition about the investment required to get these systems off the ground. I'm curious for your experience with that. Like, what did it take to get this uh, Genie up and running?
Oh yeah, I poured over those articles about Stripe minions, ramps, inspect. I think they were great, but they dedicated entire teams to it. So I think that's not unfounded, that fear. And so I would say it wasn't just a sprint in putting it together. It's the work that was compounding over the last 6 months. So we had done quite a bit of investment in, say, cloud skills and making sure that our local developers were successful and they had all the tools to help with major refactorings or migrations and help scaffold new endpoints appropriately. We invested in those. And so we had that, and that was a great ground truth to just sort of wrestle agentic development. When managed agents came out, it sort of was this light bulb moment for us where we realized we did not have to manage the compute. Now you can manage the compute. They just released a new version. But we didn't have to manage the compute. So we didn't have to deal with our AWS environment or Cloudflare or something like Modal. We could use them out of the box. And we had also recently done a migration off of Jira into Linear, and Linear provides a really great agentic interface out of the box, so that they're really emphasizing this workflow of Linear could be that single pane of glass for you to run your PDE organization, and we've embraced that as well. And so there's these companies out there that are building the tools and technologies that we've just embraced wholeheartedly. And so we're not needing to reinvent what Linear has. We're not needing to reinvent what Anthropic has. We're just marrying the two together, and adding a little bit of our own special sauce.
What kind of results are you seeing? You said it's been 3 weeks. I know that probably means it's still early, but what are some of the early signals around the impact it's having on the organization?
I'll open with like our security team's overjoyed, which is probably a strange thing to say when you think like usually security teams are freaking out about agentic development and vibe coding and all that. But our security team's overjoyed because we've effectively eliminated our vulnerability backlog. When we released Geni internally, the pitch was this is going to eliminate toil for engineering. And so as an engineer that goes on call, you're dealing with reactive work, you're dealing with bugs, you're dealing with a lot of investigations. And that's where Geni shines, where I, as an engineer, can use my brain power on complex problem solving, and all this toil, I just want to ship elsewhere. And so all of the reactive work, hey, we need to bump this package version, but actually it means we have to upgrade these 3 other libraries, and then we have to change these function definitions. Geni can just take care of it. So our vuln backlog is all but eliminated. And we're not talking just criticals and highs. We're talking the mediums and the lows.
The stuff that's historically
awesome.
been tricky to justify resourcing for, right? Because, well, the severity is not that high and we've got a lot of other stuff to do, and it can be sometimes difficult to close those quickly. What's the review process look like? Is this creating a challenge downstream on the code review side of the equation now that you've got this system cutting all these new PRs?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It was a challenge that we were facing even before Geni. And so the workflow we've aligned on is Geni will create a PR and draft. And it's the responsibility of the ticket author and or call it Geni delegator to review and do that first pass on that PR. You might have a back and forth with Geni. You might be like, that's actually not what I meant. Let's go change this. So you have a back and forth. So you've done a first pass, then it's ready for review. And then you tap, a coworker on the shoulder, another team to actually do the formal review. And then from there, merge. It did increase our volume, but this is a challenge that we and many other companies are facing. And I would say, well, I don't have an answer for you today. We're truly in the midst of figuring out, do we want to lean in towards the stacked diff model, which some companies have, and I've come from that background as well, or do we really want to focus on sort of blocking that next PR until that previous one is fully complete versus creating a full stack? So kind of an interesting topical discussion right now. But we're not a believer of like, here's a 10,000 line change. Good luck. We want to keep things small. We still require a human in the loop.
With Geni online now, are you starting to see folks outside engineering using it? How do you create rules around that? Can PMs and designers cut PRs using the system? Like what does that look like?
I mean, this is evolving as we speak. We had a tech town hall earlier today, and one of the things shown off was how a PM just sort of stepped in and fixed a problem that they wanted to fix themselves. And they used both Claude Design and Geni to make that happen. And so that is its goal. Its goal is to empower and have engineering not be the bottleneck anymore.
How does engineering feel about it? Is there any concern about kind of inheriting this code that they'll be responsible for owning from those cross-functional contributions, or it's all good?
No, I'd say it's the same. It's accelerating discussions we were already having with regards to just harness-driven development, agentic development today, where there's a burden, and I think burden is the right word, for the air quote author of the agentic work to do that review ahead of time and have to understand what's happening before putting their name on it.
Right.
And so this is accelerating it, but it's a challenge that we have today, frankly.
So if I'm an engineer at GlossGenius today, I have this system that I can use, this Geni to do background tasks. What is your current mental model around the type of things that should go to Geni, the type of things that I should do in my traditional local development environment with an interactive session?
So right now, as of today, it's toil. It's we want to eliminate toil. So let's get rid of the bugs, the nitpicks, the things that require heavy investigation. But if we fast forward weeks, months, it's going to change, and the scope and the complexity will simply grow. Where I see us trending towards is engineering is focusing so heavily on the planning stage. And so whether or not it's in a local session or helping craft, technical design documents, that's where the time and energy is necessary to go. The code part is just going to be smaller and smaller time spent when it comes to the overall SDLC.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're thinking kind of like in the factory mindset maybe where you can eventually take heavier weight specifications and offload them to agentic factory with multiple
Yep.
stages that gives you this kind of fleet of agents to go implement something larger in scope. What do you think the steps will be to get there? I know you're not there, but like if you just think about the path forward, what's on the horizon? Like what are some of the next things that you're thinking about tackling to enable that?
A few things. So one is just context setting. So making sure that these harnesses, whether or not it's in the cloud or locally, has all the context necessary. So can I pull the right information from our internal wiki? Can I pull the right data from Figma? Can I look at a production data store? So the context setting and is very critical. And I'm not wanting to just quote slap a bunch of MCP servers on it and call it a day. Context setting was the number one thing that is on the horizon right now, and making sure that it Genie does have the right information to make the correct decisions. I think that's entirely possible. I think that is the world that we're headed towards at a very very fast clip. And I think it does change the nature of like where does engineering fit into this. I still believe that engineering is critical at the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel. It used to be very critical in the middle of the funnel and less so on the edges. If that makes sense, right? At the top of the funnel, you had your marketing team, you had your product managers, et cetera. And then at the other end of the funnel, you have QA. And engineering sits squarely in the middle. And now I feel like the role of engineering, you're still dealing with validation at the end, but you're also playing a role of builder, right? I think about what brought me into engineering in the first place, and it's, the love of building. I wanted to build games, build Legos. Like I love the idea of building. And so being a builder at heart lets me move up the funnel and think about how I can drive outcomes. Because at the end of the day, a business is not successful based on how many lines of code you've written. A business is successful based on the outcomes that you're driving. So as an engineer, I think it makes our role almost even more important and more powerful. I've spoken about it internally at GlossGenius that everyone hired in engineering were hired to be problem solvers. So let's focus on the problems worth solving. When I think about engineering leadership and what I've preached over the years, that as you automate yourself out of a job, you will have more work to do. There is never a shortage of work to be done. And so I do believe that wholeheartedly here as well, that we're moving towards those edges and there will be more challenges to solve.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. The coding time is compressing, which increases the importance of speccing and choosing what to work on and solving the problems well with good designs, and then validating that they work, they land, they make customers happy. Has that reframe and kind of the expanding role of engineering changed how you think about hiring, developing your team, what you're promoting, the internal people, the soft bits.
We're right in the middle of it as we speak. And so thinking about like what is the shape of engineering of the future? We used to talk about at former places I've worked the different archetypes of an engineer, right? The entrepreneur, so someone who's great at the 0 to 1, the scalability expert, the investigator. Like there was these engineering archetypes, and I remember having these discussions about promotions or performance reviews, and it was so hard. These were always apples to oranges. Everyone was critical, everyone was needed. But these archetypes, you simply could not compare. The person who was great at prototyping, who was terrible at scale, you needed that. But you also needed this person who could scale. It was hard to find the unicorn who could do them all. And so when I think about the shape of engineering as we go forward, I almost think of it like these different strata in an organization that you're going to have your infrastructure organization that does care about scale and reliability and guardrails coming from security and all of that. That's very, very important. But at the top level, it is the builders. I don't know if it was Meta or Amazon talked about some potential like role changes, some role definition changes where there might be a title called like AI product builder, and that might be a title that people have that had a technical background at one point. So I think it's an ongoing conversation, and I think engineers will naturally gravitate towards moving closer to the customer or closer to the platform.
Very, very interesting times as everybody's jobs and their descriptions are evolving very quickly. Um, Shifting gears a little bit, the fact that you showed up on Anthropic's leaderboard is awesome because it means you're doing innovative stuff. It could also potentially be worrisome from a cost standpoint, in the sense that we're seeing headlines across the industry around token usage and the increasing need to budget for it, and people overrunning their budgets as they're developing all of these background agentic systems. How are you thinking about the cost dynamic, token maxing, encouraging your team to use Geni, but also knowing that you have some level of predictability in your Anthropic bill? Talk to me a little bit about that, like just kind of the financial side
Sure.
of all of this agentic development work.
I'll open with like I despise token maxing. I'll open with that. It's such a buzzword. I can, imagine the discussions happening in boardrooms across the country about like we need more agentic spend. It's the only way we can move faster, and it's something that transparently drives me nuts because it's focusing on the wrong thing. It's focusing on output and not outcomes, and so that drives me crazy. And so tying it to the discussion about managed agents and getting on said leaderboard, it wasn't because of token usage. Our token efficiency is pretty ridiculous, actually. It's two to three nines in terms of our cache hit rate. And so
Wow.
having these sub agents are so critical because they're each doing a piece of the puzzle. It's almost like when you read the Hacker News posts about like, hey, I've created like a bunch of agents that represent the company, and like this is the CEO and this is the CTO. It's kind of like that's what we were doing here with these sub agents. And the handoff between each one is a markdown file. It is, hey, I'm the planner. I'm taking in all this context. I'm writing it to disk. And now I hand it off to the next step and they go pick it up. They kind of have a different context window from there. They're not inheriting. It's not compounding like one giant, Claude Code session. And so that's very, very important from both a token spend perspective, but also speed. What drives me is wasn't thinking about budgets or like we must be efficient on token maxing. I was obsessed or still am obsessed with velocity. I want to make sure we're moving as fast as possible. And, I've seen sessions get unwieldy and slow and thrashy when you're just siphoning the world. And so velocity is what drives me. It's what I sort of instill from a cultural perspective. And being quote anti-token maxer, like it's kind of a positive synergy there where we can focus on the right thing. We can focus on making sure we have a process that is debuggable. We need to understand what's working and what's not. Be able to replay sessions, be able to see where it may have gotten confused. And so when we do this and when we analyze how Geni's operating, we're able to do that in a fairly, I'll say, efficient manner. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. I agree with you wholeheartedly on the token maxing thing. Goodhart's law in practice, where
Yep.
the measure becomes the goal and people start doing things that are misaligned to delivering customer value. So, totally with you there. You shared some really good tips and tricks there around how to like manage context windows and facilitate handoffs and write roll-ups of summary state to disk so that then another agent can process it, keep your context window clean. Those are really good tips and tricks. How do you make sure your team's following them? How do you manage the spend with your organization? Are you trying to constrain it at all, or do you let people run pretty free rein and just organizationally the kind of enforcement mechanisms or processes that you have in place around token use?
So there's always a guardrail. People don't realize there's a guardrail, but there's always a guardrail. Um, Funny enough, we haven't hit said guardrail. The only time we've hit the guardrails is in the agentic parts of the product itself that we've released to customers, because we just didn't know how things were going to react in the market. And so that's where we had to do investigations and sort of right size accordingly. But when it comes to our development processes, frankly, we haven't hit it. And so then someone could be thinking, well, it sounds like you're not, using it enough. That sounds like the obvious response. But I would actually credit the team's internal investment to setting context files already. We have Agents.md sprinkled all across our 80 some odd code bases. We have about 75 or so skills in a shared internal marketplace that we have done trainings on to encourage developers to use. And so if you're using these skills, if you are using our repos, you're already within guardrails that aren't set by finance, but they're set by engineering. And that upfront investment has absolutely paid off from a velocity standpoint and from a FinOps standpoint. I'll say unintentionally so. But that investment, I think some companies are still not prioritizing, or they're just
Yeah.
giving raw access to these amazing tools, but then not putting the scaffolding in place in their
Yeah.
repos. That's a big miss in my opinion.
Yeah, sometimes when I read the headlines, I wonder how that much money can be getting spent and burned. But I think a lot of it is a lack of maturity in the developer infrastructure and the foundation. I guess for folks who might be going through the adoption journey, they've got Claude Code or Cursor or Codex licenses distributed to their team. Folks are experimenting with a lot of individualized workflows, and they're wanting to start investing in kind of like a centralized platform foundation for this. How do they get started? Like what was your journey like to get to that place where you've got this library of skills, you've got this documentation, you've got this harness that is now working so well? What does that look like to get to from 0 to 1 on that?
Looking back, it'll seem like such a brilliant set of steps. But at the time, we were kind of just, figuring it out as we go. But essentially, the workflow was this is about a year ago now. Hey, here's all these cool tools. Let's just, issue ramp cards to folks to go spend money and figure out some of these tools out there that they could play with. And so a lot of engineers were playing with different tools. We collected a lot of feedback, and we sort of identified the power users, the people who really were like, hey, this is really cool. And not just from a toy perspective, but from, hey, this is changing the way I work. So my boss and our head of TPM here at Gloss got together and formed a squad they called Power Up. And it was a virtual team. And it took a bunch of the folks that were those super users, brought them together and said, clear your plates. Let's figure this out for GlossGenius. So The simple answer I have is just you got to create space for this.
Yeah.
We created space for it, and that's where they learned by doing. They learned by doing. They figured out, hey, this is how we should do a skill. Hey, let's go try this out. And they were dogfooding every single day, having stand-ups, testing each other's workout. And after about 2 months of that, turned around and said, it's time to bring it to the organization at large. And of course, there were people on the quote outside that were seeing this, that were experimenting. So the company's still evolving. But then we did a very deliberate team by team training to announce, like, here's how you get set up. The same way a company might do an on-call training. Here's how to use, your paging software. We did the same thing here. Here's how you set up the marketplace. Here's how you get the skills. Here's how you trigger the skills. Here's how it impacts the code base. Now together, let's go through what's it mean to say, remove a stale feature flag, which is a very common sort of toil that we may have to do. And so we walked through team by team doing this and kind of came away and we were able to step back and look at the data and say, wow, we just went vertical
Mhm. Yeah.
as a result of it.
I think that's the hard part for a lot of organizations is you have to make a short-term trade-off of predictable execution for this long-term benefit where now suddenly you'll have all these velocity gains and your whole organization will be working more effectively. How did you have to negotiate that with your product team or with your CEO, with the executive stakeholders to get the air cover to do this? Like what did that look like?
Of course, of course. If you end up in a discussion where one person is so critical to the delivery of some project, and oh, if we don't have this person, it quote delays this project by 3 weeks. Oh my goodness, look, this is going to be terrible. We absolutely had to go through those negotiations,
Yeah.
and at some point, we just had to put our foot down and say, this is how it's going to be. And I think what gave us that headroom was actually things unrelated to AI, which is just us as a company growing, maturing, bettering our processes overall. So removing AI from the equation, our velocity was already improving. And so that sort of afforded some of that headroom. But that's a little bit
Yeah.
unique to us as a growing startup.
Yeah, it's a good, I mean, a lot of these things come down to trust battery, right? So if the engineering team has a high trust battery with stakeholders, they can say, hey, trust us. We got to take this risk. We're going to take this risk. We're going to invest in the foundation. It's going to pay off. And if you can do things to build up that trust battery to then make that big push, you can create the space to do these transformative investments. So, Brady, this has been a really fun conversation. Thank you so much for sharing some of the learnings and some of the experiments that you're running at Gloss. Is there any personal AI thing that has recently excited you, maybe with your own workflow or something really novel, really cool you've seen one of your team members do, a new development that's come out in the past couple of weeks that you're excited about? Just curious, what's exciting you today?
So this is such like a managerial response that I'm going to have, but I was sick last weekend. I was sitting in bed and I was like, sure, I use Claude every day and it helps me get my day done, but I was like, there's something more. There's something more I could do, and I spent the weekend hacking around and sort of rethinking that end-to-end process, and I'm still kind of testing it out, but I kind of feel like I built my own EA. And for me, where I'm going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and I really need to create these big empty blocks of focus time for me to just get in deep on a technical challenge, a people challenge, helping move the company forward. I'm really excited. I'm really excited that as someone who context switches maybe too much in the job, I've created something that's going to help create space for me
Yeah.
to be heads down and focus again because I miss it. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm looking forward
As
to.
someone who runs between meetings way too much, that resonates a ton. So I hope it works for you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Brady. This has been a really fun conversation.
Likewise.